I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
And following his father's untimely death, in that it did occur far long after it should be expected, when he was 147 years old, Joseph fell upon his father's face, which did make a change from him falling upon his own, and wept upon him, and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel as soon as possible, just to make sure he was dead, and not just pretending. And 40 days were fulfilled for him. For so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed, for they did take their time when embalming folks in those days. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days, because obviously Joseph was a busy man, and he did have his staff to do this kind of thing for him. And when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph, regardless of being the second most important person in the country, and Pharaoh's most trusted deputy, spake unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace in your eyes, speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, as he would anyone, as he was indeed annoying, saying, Lo, I die. In my grave which I have digged for me in the land of Canaan, there shalt thou bury me. Now, therefore, let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again. And though at first Joseph's request for compassionate leave was denied, as for the past 17 years Joseph did spend every weekend by his father's side, as Jacob did breathe his last breath, and prepare to be gathered unto his people, only to be bitterly disappointed when he did wake up the following morning, this instruction was overruled upon I. And Pharaoh said, Go up, and bury thy father, according as he made thee swear. But thou shalt take this time off out of thine holiday allotment, or take it off unpaid. And Joseph went up to bury his father. And because Pharaoh did decide that he did want a bit of time to himself, and that he could manage on his own for the next few months, as Joseph did travel the 500 miles or so to Canaan and back, with him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, just to make sure he did come back. And though Joseph may have been the second most important man in the land, he was still a slave of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh wouldn't just want him running away, as it might completely ruin the sequel to this narrative, or at least leave some difficult-to-resolve plot holes. And all the house of Joseph, and his brethren, and his father's house went too. Only their little ones, and their flocks, and their herds they left in the land of Goshen, all by themselves, with presumably nobody left behind to care for them. And lo, when they would return, in many months hence, they would find the walls of their tents covered in crayon, the goats covered in finger-paint handprints, sugar puffs everywhere, and a half-eaten jam sandwich wedged inside the video recorder. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. And it was a very great company, and surely the people of Canaan must have thought that they were being invaded. And because it is well known that Hebrews cannot just go anywhere without they get completely lost, they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan, and a considerable distance north past the place that they did head for, and there they mourned for a great and very sore lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians. Wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond Jordan, which doth in some cases translate into a language that would be known as English as mourning of Egypt, and in others doth translate as Thou art holding the map upside down. And the whole procession did travel back along the road nearly 100 miles until they did arrive at Machpelah, which they had passed by accident while Joseph was talking on his cell phone several weeks previously. And his sons did unto him according as he commanded them, and a few other things that he had commanded them not, though at least they didn't sell him to anyone, as they had done with Joseph, though it wasn't for a want of trying. For his sons carried him into the land of Canaan by the least direct route possible, going miles out of their way and getting lost several times, and buried him in a cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham bought with the field for a possession of a burying place of Ephron the Hittite before Mamre. Though what is mentioned not in this narrative, yet is talked about in a narrative that would one day be known as the book of Jasher, is that Jacob's brother Esau did turn up that day to stop them. And a great battle did ensue, during which a grandson of Jacob did take a club, and did hit his great uncle on the back of the head with a blow so hard that his eyes did fall out, and did roll to the feet of the embalmed corpse of Jacob, who had been dead for months by now, that did open its eyes and laugh, which indeed must have been a sight to see. And so joyous was the corpse of Jacob, that when they buried him in the cave they did also include his brother's head in there also, so that he would have something to chuckle at if he did get bored. And Joseph returned into Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father, after he had buried his father. And they did stop off at a great many gift shops on their way back, and bring back a great deal of tat as souvenirs, and gifts for those that did await their arrival back at home. And Joseph's brethren did stuff their suitcases full of a great many cheap cigarettes, and DVDs stuffed full of hardcore porn, in the hope that they would be stopped not, as they did return by customs. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. For the previous 17 years, and the last couple of chapters, had completely passed them by, as if that part of this narrative had been written by a completely different author. And having seen the extreme lengths that their brother would go to so that he could fuck with them, having previously sent them backwards and forwards unto Canaan to get various relatives, they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren, and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now, we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him, for they had obviously gone to see him in person, when their messenger did not return. For Joseph had laid a great many plans regarding the fate of his brethren, that did involve at least 2 of them becoming integral components of the foundations of several soon-to-be-built pyramids. His servants had been in the western desert digging a well so deep that it would need a fireproof bucket. At least one of them would become the first man in space, and just that week he had taken delivery of several crates filled with crocodiles with frickin' laser beams on their heads. And his brethren, knowing that Joseph had a dungeon filled with implements many years ahead of their time, so that he could go medieval on them, also went and fell down before his face. And they said, Behold, we be thy servants, hoping that they could kiss enough arse to get to a better life, or at least extend the one they already had. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? And nervously they did look amongst themselves, until one of their number did ask if he was not now the head of the family. To which he did reply that that would still continue to be God the Father, or at least some combination of those 3 words, and that they should seek his forgiveness rather than their brothers'. And he said, But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save as much people alive. For though it was a convoluted and sometimes confusing plot, with a great deal of intrigue and skullduggery, and a cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, like all good stories, everything did turn out fine in the end. Now, therefore, fear ye not, I will nourish you, and your little ones. And he comforted them, and spake kindly unto them, and they did all laugh amongst themselves, and pat each other on the back in an overly friendly way, as cheerful music did start to play, and the scene did fade to black. And in the epilogue, Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he had his father's house. And Joseph lived 110 years, and never did return unto the land of the Canaanites, as his father had prophesied. And lo, as sentimental music did play, in a montage of happy scenes from his family life, Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manas, were brought up upon Joseph's knees, and he did give them half a shekel each, and Werther's Originals caramel sweets every time he did see them, even after they had grown up, and they did have children of their own. And not giving up on his father's prophecy, Joseph said unto his brethren, who were just as old as he was, if not older, I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, that none of them did seem to have much luck holding on to. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, as by that time there were thousands of them, so at least one of them might remember, saying, God will surely visit you, and so thou should always keep a cold lager in thine fridge, and a fresh plate of buffalo wings upon hand, and also ye shall carry up my bones from hence, because it's surely not looking like I shall be visiting the land of my fathers any time soon, unless I doth get sent there in a box. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, on a warm sunny day, out in the garden amongst his tomato plants, while his grandson did play nearby. And they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt, and the lid was screwed down tightly, and they did throw him in the river Nile with the crocodiles, where he did indeed sleep with the fishes. And out in the desert late at night, in a tent at the edge of an encampment, an old man did finally set down his quill, and then did blow upon the page upon which he had been writing, and when the ink was dried, did place it upside down upon a pile with a great many others, and then he did turn the pile over, so that the first page was foremost, showing only the title, a word written in the language of his fathers, that did mean literally Genesis. And then he did hand it unto the Lord. And the Lord, who throughout the man's writing had acted as the man's inspiration, guiding his hand in his writing, recounting unto him the events found within the narrative as their one and only witness, did read through its pages. And when he was done, he did express his great satisfaction at its great accuracy and completeness before handing it back. And then, with the narrative complete, and his story told in full, did finish drinking his lager, get up from where he did sit, and did go out of the tent, and left off home into the night. And at last alone, the man did pour what did remain of the coffee in the percolator in unto his cup of divining, and with great pride and satisfaction he did take a seat in his favourite armchair, and did sit back and look around his tent. And after a while, his gaze did fall upon the groceries by the door, and the big bag of apples from Adam and Steve's garden store, his son's boat-shaped wooden toy box, and the toy animals it did contain, his daughter's fairy castle, resplendent and gay with rainbow colours, that was charred on one side from when it did one night fall in unto the campfire, when the Lord did trip over it, his old polo-neck sweater, torn around the shoulder, and its sleeves hacked off, hung upon its hanger with his multicoloured bathrobe on his wardrobe door, and the map of the land showing the complicated route he had been taking into the promised land at the direction of the Lord, pinned unto the back panel of the tent. And he did look upon the titles of the books upon his bookshelf, which did include Honest Abe's Guide to Trading, Alter Your Life with Outdoor Cooking, A Beginner's Guide to Crowd Control, The Jungle Book, and his bumper book of anagrams. And suddenly, in his mind, he did hear the words of the Lord, as they did recount the many events that he had written of. And as these words did fill his thoughts, the cup of coffee did fall from his grasp, and did smash upon the floor into a great many pieces. And he did look down, and he did see upon its base, written in red letters, Joseph's Porcelain, River Safe, Slave Safe, Egypt. And with this he did burst out forth from his tent into the night, stopping only to ask his assistant if he'd seen the way in which the Lord had gone, so the old man could follow. And out in the dunes the Lord did walk as if pained by his great age, yet as he did so his pace did quicken, and his bearing did straighten, and the luxury ox cart did pull up by his side, as he did stop and light a joint made of the most righteous herb, And the Lord did climb up upon its front by the driver, and did look over unto him to see that it was in fact his son Jesus, who did smile before driving off with the Lord into the darkness, into the night. And Moses, the old man, did stand there alone in the dark, and look all about him, and did see him not, as he did remember what the Lord had once told him. The greatest trick the Lord had ever pulled was convincing the world that he existed. And like that, he was gone.